Hi, I'm Jack, and I'm here to talk about evolving your value stream management with value creation networks. I'm Jack Maher. I'm a technology consultant in the engineering excellence practice at EPAM Systems. Headquartered just outside of Philadelphia, we might just be the most interesting and largest technology company that you've probably never heard of. Do yourself a favor and check us out. We've got a lot of interesting things going on. I hope that you'll also connect with me on LinkedIn. That would be a great way to further explore ideas and have discussions around topics that we'll bring up today. Over the past decade or more, a lot of our organizations have really come a long way in not looking at silly and pointless things and focusing on realized value, the value that we create and deliver on an ongoing basis. Over the past couple of years, we've also seen a significant increase in a focus on the values that we stand for, that our organizations espouse and support. This combination of value and values couldn't have come at a better time, and we see it happening in many different ways. There's certainly a strong convergence in all of our professional domains, whether you're a DevOps engineer, an Agile practitioner, ITIL, various architecture frameworks, business analysis, etc., have all come to focus much more on value and what we deliver. Today, many of us are in the space of identifying value and probably even looking at or maybe even working with our value streams to really focus on understanding how we create and deliver value, to whom we deliver it, and how we can do a better job of focusing on that value. And over the past couple of years, some of us have begun to focus on the idea of value stream management, of being able to measure and monitor those processes that are critical to the flow of value through our organizations. As we look to mature that, it's also useful for us to consider where we will be going next. It may inform some of our architecture and ideas, and certainly it can help us with fleshing out the vision of where we're headed. And that is to build value creation networks. It's an evolutionary approach that builds on some of the things that you're already doing, some of the practices that you already embrace. In some respects, we might think of it as how we can continue to grow and expand where we can create and deliver value without having to build anything new, and in many cases without having to buy anything. So let's dig into that just a little bit. When we start to talk about value, one of my favorite quotes of all time around value that comes from my good friend and co-author Carmen Diardo, when he once asked, "Of what value to whom?" He meant it very fully, and it was an epiphany to those of us who were having the conversation, because it really clarified the fact that there were a different set of values and value attainment from many different perspectives. And in fact, that's what really began this journey for most of us of value stream management. The realization that there are many kinds of value, many forms that we need to support and nurture and develop in our organizations. And with the advent of the technology and the capability to measure and monitor and even to manage the flow of value throughout our organizations, this was an idea that really has caught on with the speed of wildfire. Just 5 years ago, it was very much a niche concept, and it has grown to become a mainstream approach. At least we're thinking about it. In 2018, when Carmen and I were focused on this, there was only really one vendor that we could go to begin to build out some kind of a flow of value, of the value that we were creating and delivering. From that time until 2020, in 2 short years, it went from a novel concept to a platform. In fact, for Gartner to term it as an emerging VSM platform meant there was a great deal of growth and maturity, multiple vendors and emerging ideas and even standards. So the growth was tremendous, and it's because of what happens as we build into this, as we investigate, explore, and begin to create what might we do? What if we did that? And with the awareness of the capabilities and the growing enablement, it began to grow upon itself, which is why it's become so visible in the industry, that the more you learn, the more you realize you need to learn. In many respects, we see this happening in many different ways. In the trade approach of apprentice, journeyman, craftsman, or shu, ha, ri, that the more we learn, the more we realize, the more we can do, and the better it can be. We've also began to realize that the developmental value streams that we've been very focused on for many years, and operational value streams, are not at all independent, and they become very intertwined. And as we again see the opportunities and the ability for these value streams to support each other, to be able to manage the intersections, the places where they converge and diverge, and in fact, to even connect to other value streams. So that's where we begin to make our departure from the things that we have been doing, the things that we are doing, into what's next. And that is to expand on this idea of the other value streams that we may be able to tap into, that we can support and can support us. Now, let's get into the nuts and bolts here for a second, because we need to understand what it is that we're going to have to make this happen, and why we would want to do so, what the business or the organization that we are supporting would view as the reason or the benefit for making this kind of investment of time, effort, and money. In order to do value stream management well, there are a number of things that are necessary. Number one, we have to have a model. We have to understand how our value stream works. What are the inputs, the processes, and the outputs, the control points, where there are things that we can measure and monitor, things that we need to look out for or to make sure don't happen. Once we understand the model of how the value is created and how it flows through our organization to the delivery to our end users, we then need to be able to collect the appropriate data and manage that data throughout the process. This gives us the ability to have observability, to be able to see with the data that we've collected how the model is working, how the expectations are being realized, and if we need to make any changes and the result of those changes, so that we can confirm that the expectation of the result would be realized. Now, observability is a real challenge, and a lot of organizations, vendors, and industry groups are really working to drive what observability is and can be. Because what we really want is we want to be able to manage our businesses, to drive the behaviors of our businesses based on that value process. And the better we can do that, the more quickly we can adjust, the more successful we'll be. And that's really what business agility is all about. Being able to make the right changes quickly to be better than the competition, to better support the markets that we participate in, to better provide value to those who we serve. And this observability is the real challenge, because there is a lot of complexity in just what we know about the places in which we operate, the markets, the people, the industries, the environment that we operate in. There's a lot of complexity there. The better we can represent that, the more realistic our model, and therefore our ability to manage it will be better. There's also a lot of uncertainty in the number of assumptions. So being able to identify, monitor those assumptions to ensure ongoing validity or increase the accuracy of the estimates or expectations. Where it really becomes interesting is being able to identify unknown relationships and the impacts of those relationships on our environment and our events. That's where observability really takes a big shift from what we've seen in the past of things like dashboards to visualizations that will enable even more complex relationships to be displayed, monitored, and managed. And for a lot of our organizations, the dynamic nature of the markets, of who we are, of what we understand, of what's happening in our ecosystems, there are fewer known questions with expected answers and more of a need for our business partners and organizations to be able to see what's going on, because they'll need to be able to know what they see when they see it. We need to give them the opportunity and the ability to deliver on the promise of, we'll know it when we see it. One of the things we want to try to afford our organizations is the ability for our leaders and management teams to be able to operate in the most expressive way possible, to give them information so that they can begin to see what's unfolding in a real-time way. And the opportunity for them to be able to manage the business by seeing what they need to see, because they'll know it when they see it, not because they had to know the questions to ask up front. So, we think we've got the tools to do this now, and certainly they're growing in maturity every single day. So, what's next? Well, first of all, we're going to tackle the systems, the processes, those things that are within our sphere, within our control. And inevitably, we're going to start with what we know and expand out. Some areas will be easier. Some areas will have significantly more return on that invested effort than others. And as we complete those, we clear out the low-hanging fruit, if you will, then we can begin to look at where can we next help the flow of delivery of value. It might be downstream to begin, so that the more we can flow, that won't be bottlenecked at the subsequent processes, because we can help with friction there. And moving upstream as well. How can we facilitate the flow of the entire system? Once we've looked at our system, we also need to make sure that we are not guilty of local optimization at the expense of the whole. So how can we facilitate the process throughout all of our sphere? This brings us to an interesting place, because this is exactly what we've seen, for example, in the industrialization, that the ability to better control resources, the ability to better control quality, the ability to have a competitive advantage in many cases has led organizations to conglomerates, to vertical integrations, and even cooperatives, things like the trading companies that we see in the Japanese industrial complex. So, do we really, though, need to build those ourselves, or do we need to own any of those things? In fact, we may not want to, we may not need to. It might be best for everyone if we are able to be much more collaborative and to find those who share the same kinds of interests that we do and band together in a more proactive and collaborative way where we may not have looked in the past. So let's talk about that. How might we do that? Well, one idea for us would be to reach out to others that have the same kind of values that we hold. Our organizations are increasingly vocal about what we believe in, what we support, and what we care about. And by the same token, we can find other organizations in our industries, in our markets, in our domains that share those same kinds of values that we do. We also should look to those who we serve and the values that we share with them. And there will be many overlaps between these groups, but certainly it won't be 100%. And finding those and sharing those values may in fact help all of us raise the tide in what we're doing, for who we serve, for the value that we create, the values that we want to live and share. In many cases, we already have strategic alliances and partnerships. But to what degree are we actually integrating them into our value stream? Are there opportunities for us, even if it's co-opetition, for us to be able to better serve our markets, our organizations, and our industries by working together in entire ecosystems? Just as we would look outside of our immediate domain in our value streams and our organizations to extend up and downstream, maybe across other product lines or other groups in our organizations, we can do the same throughout our industries with ecosystems. And to a degree we've never been able to before, probably didn't even think of before, is how we can also do this from a social perspective and the opportunities for us to contribute from a societal perspective, the opportunities to build these values and share these values across even more dimensions, building that engagement and the things that drive the viral nature of when people get excited because they're contributing to something they care about in a meaningful way. We're probably already including conversations with channel partners or distributors, and we have a lot of alliances, a lot of common ideas. But again, to the degree that we're doing these things, how are we actively managing and supporting the value creation and delivery that all of these bring to the table, but we're probably using in a more haphazard way? Maybe it's strategic, but still not part of the overall value streams that we want to manage, that we want to improve upon, that we want to support. And also additional affinity groups, organizations that have cut across, in many ways, the structures of how we work, of including these associations in our value streams as well as social causes become more a part of who we are and how we operate. And again, the ability to build out entire ecosystems, to look at the spheres of those that we support, of those that we want to provide value to, and the other parts of our ecosystems that may not even have a direct impact on our value streams, but are going to be a benefit to the organizations and the people that we serve. Again, today we've been talking about evolving your value stream management with value creation networks. I hope that you'll connect with me and we can discuss these ideas further. If these ideas are of interest to you, you might also be interested in some of these other resources, such as Standing on Shoulders, The Leader's Guide to Digital Transformation, and Value Stream Mapping, The Secret to Successful Digital Transformation. Let's help each other and rise the tide for everyone. Thank you.